Hello everyone. In this demo, we're going to be looking at how to set up and use PreSigned URL with both StorageGRID and ONTAP S3. As covered in the previous video about PreSigned URL, it provides a great way to access resources not only within your organizations but at times outside of organization, where an end application or user might not have the fixed set of credentials they need to access an S3 object. PreSigned URL provides a way to collaborate and share documents, and in case of media organizations is a common workflow which they use today. So let's look at StorageGRID first and the example and how to do that, and then we quickly dive into the ONTAP S3 side of things. So I already have a StorageGRID running 11.8. I've got a tenant. Tenant allow you to segregate data within the grid environment. Each tenant can have one or more buckets. As we see in this case, I have a bucket called demo1. I can log in to that tenant, so I'm able to then interact with that bucket. That tenant has some set of access keys, buckets, one or more buckets, as I said. If I go and click into this bucket, I can view the content of this bucket using this native S3 console, and if I want to do that, I'll obviously require a set of S3 access key and secret key. So let's say if I want to do that, I can specify those credentials, and these are credentials which get created when you set up your StorageGRID tenant. You can create again additional one if you need, and there you go. So I log in. I have a couple of objects in there. I can interact with them. If I want, I can put action, download, or even delete objects as well. For now, the use case is we want to access this readme.txt file without having the credentials, or read it for a temporary period of time with temporary credentials or the PreSigned URL. So I've got AWS S3, AWS client or CLI client deployed, installed, and configured with the configure command. I specify those credentials. Once I've done that, I can use AWS S3 and its subcommands to interact with the StorageGRID environment. In this case, we look at talking to a StorageGRID endpoint, which is a load balancer endpoint. I have an self-signed certificate, so I'm using no verify SSL, and then I'm talking to that bucket, and that readme.txt is a file I'm interested in. So let's go and enter, and I get a URL which is time bound. Once that expiry is happen, I won't be able to access the resources here. So let's go and access this object. I have just created a temporary URL, and it gives me access to this text file without specifying any credentials. I have other ways to access that too, and if I go into, in this case, I'm using curl, so I'm going to talk to this same endpoint using curl, and on Windows I can specify the URL, so I just need to remove my previous URL. I give it a path. I need to make sure I give that path in a double quote format, so it does not take special characters, and there you go. So it read the file straight away. Done. I'm able to access this from anywhere for a period of time, and once that period has happened, it would expire and I won't have access to it. So this is one of the older cached URLs, and you see the request has expired. Now if I want to do the second part, which is obviously I want to write objects to that bucket. So that bucket, I'm also accessing it through this tool called S3 Browser. I want to upload a image file or a demo1.png file. Let's remove that file. It was already there. In order to update or upload the objects, I need to use AWS SDK to generate a PreSigned URL. So whether it's a put or a post, I will need to use the SDK. In this case, I'm using a simple Python script, which is talking to my StorageGRID endpoint, providing my credentials, and providing the bucket name and the type and the file I'm uploading. And it's going to generate me a PreSigned URL path back to me. I have that script, and I'm going to run that script now to get the PreSigned URL. And fairly quick, as you see, I got this URL, and now I'm able to upload a file if that's the workflow I want to work on. So in this case, I can use the same curl example. I'm specifying the header because it is required when you're uploading a file, and I specify the name of the file, and I'm giving the pre-signed URL path. So I'm not specifying, I've not shared any access key or secret key with the user, and they need to simply upload a file into that bucket. And there you go. Specify that, and it should have uploaded by now, and there you go. Demo1.png has arrived in here just now, as you see. So fairly quick, a simple workflow, give us a very flexible capability to upload content where I don't have fixed set of credentials to my bucket. So we've done that part. This was the StorageGRID. Let's look at ONTAP S3 as well. So ONTAP S3, obviously ONTAP supports S3 capability. I have an SVM which is being pre-created. I created that earlier on. I have a bucket called demo as well in this case. And that bucket is something I need to interact with. I need to upload some files and read some file and maybe write some files. So I have a NetApp logo PNG file. Let's delete that file for now because I will upload that file. I have a license.txt file, and let's try to create a pre-signed URL to access that file. And here you go. I see AWS S3 pre-signed, exactly same way AWS CLI has been configured. I'm going to talk to it. Let's do clear CLS, and then I run this command, and it gives me a URL, and I should be able to use that URL like we did with StorageGRID to go and read that text file. Paste that here. I have double codes. I should remove them. And oh, I see the problem because it's still copied my clipboard from my previous session. It has the StorageGRID endpoint. That's not what we want. We want the ONTAP endpoint. And there you go. That's the file we're reading right now without credential. Pretty straightforward, as we did with StorageGRID. Now let's look at the second part where we said, well, in order to upload a file, we need to do a put or a post. In our example, we will have a Python script which will go and do that part for us. Similar to StorageGRID, I've specified my credentials. I'm talking to an endpoint, which is an ONTAP base. One difference here is ONTAP will require the signature version to be fixed to v4 when creating or generating the pre-signed URL. So I'm using v4 here. StorageGRID, it didn't matter. It can use v2. In this case, I had to do v4. I am using ONTAP 9.15.1 release as of now, and it is required to have v4 for this functionality. So let's now look at creating a URL. Actually, it's on my first command, and that's my script. I'm going to run that script. It's going to generate me a URL, which is this one, the pre-signed URL, and it's got that expiry header and all that stuff. I'm going to copy that path. Once I've copied the path, I simply need to use a tool or mechanism to upload that file. Let's do a clear on that as well. So there you go. I already have a pre-existing session in there, or pre-existing pre-signed URL, but let's remove that. I want to paste a new URL which I've just generated for the purpose of this demo. It's a bit of a long URL, so slowly churning through, deleting those characters. And nearly done. As you see, I'm uploading a NetApp logo.png file. I'm using insecure flag because I have self-signed certificate. Oh, I may need to recopy this thing. There you go. And that should do it. So there you go, all done. And if I go back to my S3 browser, refresh it, I see my NetApp logo. If I download that, download it to, where should we download a desktop maybe? And the file arrives in the desktop, and we can move all this stuff. Then save that. And there's the NetApp logo PNG, and that's the file we just interacted with. So that shows us that we can simply share resources, be it ONTAP S3 or StorageGRID, PreSigned URL support, and it can be very useful in the environments where you need to share your resources to applications or users who don't have S3 credentials. They do require a client to interact with it. Obviously, if you're reading, as you saw, you can just do it through browser. For writing, you will need to have a client which can upload those objects. In my case, I just use the simple curl example. Hopefully you found this useful, and what I will do is I'll post this simple small script onto one of my GitHub account. If you want to refer to this for any testing you may want to do, that may be useful. But with that, thanks for your time, and hopefully you found this useful. Thanks. Bye.